This is a webcast that is in the lineup of activities that we've done relative to our second research project with Accenture on cloud. We've had two great reports we've done with our strategic partner, Accenture, and they've been really good experiences for us. This second report was published. We did 2 conference sessions on it. We are recording this webcast, and the reports are available on our resource center. For this session, obviously the recording, as it says, it will be available in our NASCIO Resource Center. Use the chat box for questions. We're going to get to Q&A at the end of this webcast, so we'll be watching for your questions. And you may even see some dialogue going back and forth in the chat, and that's all good. That's all part of the event. Let's go to the next slide. This is our panel. So glad to have Jason here and Denise and JR. They will be giving their perspectives from their states. Thank you all so very much. And Patrick, thank you so much for facilitating this session. We really appreciate it. We have enjoyed working with you and look forward to future initiatives. Let's move to the next slide, and I'll move it over to Patrick.
Well, thanks, Eric, and thanks to the entire NASCIO team for the opportunity to work with y'all. It's always a great partnership, and we appreciate the chance to be able to inform and support the NASCIO community and all the work that the CIOs are doing around the country. So we're grateful for that. Also grateful for all the contributors to this work, which includes almost every state CIO participated in a survey that helped inform the data in this report. We got a lot of news from folks to help inform the reports. For all of the folks who have contributed, whether it was a survey or through the writing, members of the NASCIO staff, my colleagues, we're grateful for all of that help. We've got a great panel today. Jason, JR, Denise, we've spent some time talking about the discussion around cloud and look forward to getting input from this group, as well as continuing to share what we think is an important tool in the CIO's bag, which is how do you help inform the stakeholders that you're working with every day that the types of solutions individuals require government need the modernization, need the types of approaches that the cloud enables and the cloud brings. And some of the highlights from the report really bring out the idea. Cloud has become something that we just swim in. It's something that we have to accept as practitioners. And there is the quote. Thank you very much, Julie. We, as practitioners, as leaders, we have to be able to take the advancements that we're seeing in every with technology and apply them to the way that agencies are doing business, the way they're interacting with their residents, with their citizens, and improving the manner in which government provides a service. And so the way we saw the report this year was less about the data from year to year, more and more about using the data as a tool to help CIOs communicate with their stakeholders, whether it's somebody in a budget office, whether it's an agency head, whether it's a governor's office, or whether it's a legislature. That the cloud is indeed something that we're all swimming in. It's something that we have to embrace, and in doing so, we open up a lot of opportunities for agencies and the services that the agencies provide. So we're gonna jump to the next slide, and then we're gonna get into some dialogue. We have a lot of the data that is in the report. We're going to get to some of that to highlight some of the findings. But first, we wanted to just really speak this year's work with NASCIO. And again, in the spirit of trying to use this as a way to communicate, to help a CIO in their stakeholder management and in their strategy for adoptions of new solutions and technologies, what is it that really came out of the interviews that we had and the data that we saw? So you can see here that these are directly from the report. There were 6 primary recommendations, and we'll run through them real quick, and then we'll get some feedback from our panelists. So the first one being develop a "we are already in the cloud" messaging theme. A lot of the data supports that. We'll look at that here in a bit. But we are already in the cloud. And I think a lot of people can see that in one way or the other, whether it's a platform solution, whether it's a migration activity. A lot of what we see is already in the, it's something that we're adopting. It's part of our everyday life. Learn from the other states. Use the other states as ways to communicate with stakeholders that cloud migrations and the use of cloud to modernize has been done, is being done, and is proving to be effective where it's being done properly and where it's being done well. Encourage the agencies to design and orchestrate within the cloud continuum. What we meant by that is trying to help and guide the customers, the agencies, the customers of state CIOs to think about their solutions within the cloud. Don't think about the cloud after you are beginning to design. Think about the cloud as you are designing and as you're thinking about the outcome. We still see a lot of the mentality of OpEx not really taking hold yet. So we believe that becoming an OpEx expert, that CIOs being able to speak about operational capabilities and baking in expenses that are more of a service will help. And it will help change the mindset of buying a service rather than a thing, which is certainly important in the way that cloud services are consumed and purchased and utilized. Being cloud ready also helps you prepare for the next big thing. We know that the next big thing is already here. Gen AI is certainly on the top of everybody's mind right now, and we're maintaining and believe that helping folks embrace cloud is going to help folks get to the capabilities that Gen AI will offer faster. And then finally, using tools and data within your own environments to create your own assessments with your stakeholders to determine what your own maturity is today and to give you a path forward on where you could be tomorrow are ways to communicate a path, a way to communicate a strategy. And NASCIO has those tools available for this group to use. So these are the recommendations. There's a lot more in the report than this. But why don't we jump in and hear where the states are going? So, Denise, we're going to start with you. It hasn't been that long since we were at the annual conference together, but certainly it probably feels like it's been a lot longer. The days are long and the years are short. So, would love to hear your perspective. It's changed since then. What you're thinking of when it comes to cloud and its inclusion in your state strategy and how you're talking to the agencies. Just kind of give us a waterfront view of what you're seeing.
I think when we met last at NASCIO, I talked a lot about that next phase of the journey, and it gave me an opportunity as we're planning for our next fiscal year and planning for some key priorities, where the conversation that we had really aligns to those strategies. And for me, at a tactical standpoint, that OpEx expertise piece is really something that's hitting home, because when you look at foundationally, we're establishing what our core enterprise services are for an expected level of service that any user across the state and any agency and department can expect from Agency of Digital Services. And looking at that OpEx component, we really need to ensure that there's a level of predictability built in, where we've now been able to drill down that cloud enables us to look at a per user per month rate. But in reality, does that align to how the business operates and how the budget gets funded for those core enterprise services? And can we look at a more streamlined level of predictability in that when it comes to our next phase of our journey with cloud adoption? So that's one of the key areas from a tactical standpoint. On the strategic side, looking at what cloud has enabled for a user experience of our residents in the state, and also our state employees, and also the users within my agency too, looking at the mobile ready consideration that cloud has enabled for us, because the demographics of our user community and the way in which our agencies and staff within the government operate, cloud has enabled that change and empowered that change. And so now we have to look at, as we go into that next stage, how we need to make sure that we've delivered those outcomes the way that the users are trying to receive the services or provide the services. And so those are two of those focus areas for us right now.
Great, thank you. And in a minute, I want to go back to how those messages are being received. What kind of feedback you're getting from your stakeholders as you promote those messages. But before we do that, Jason, why don't we jump over to you? Why don't you, same type of thing, waterfront view. How is New York approaching the cloud conversation? What kind of feedback do you get from your stakeholders? What are you navigating in this conversation about cloud and what it means for government delivery?
So I'm sure New York is doing well, but Massachusetts, on the other hand, we have a different focus.
New York was on my mind. I'm sorry about that, Jason.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. So let's just give it a little bit of context. Way back in 2016, Massachusetts implemented a cloud-first strategy. And you imagine all the application owners and everything trying to go through the doorway at the same time. They all got stuck. And the few that made it through found that the room wasn't finished. And so very quickly, Massachusetts reframed their cloud-first strategy into a cloud-smart strategy, which allowed them to itemize and focus on prioritized migrations. Since then, we have migrated the majority of our applications. We're probably around 60% of our applications are migrated into the cloud. The migrations have been very successful. We have many significant applications. Our ERP systems, for example, are all in the clouds and they're running great. Where we have been less successful is on the staff reskilling. All of the people who support the cloud today for Massachusetts are either a private contractor or independent contractors working for us. We don't have any FTEs that we're able to transition into supporting the cloud. So that was an area where I think we continue to focus and try to build. And then one other quick note of our migration, I think we have room to grow with our automation. We've done some good automation, particularly related to database space, but for the most part, we have more we can go on in terms of patch management, vulnerability management, things like that.
Great, thank you. That's a great start. And we're going to come back to a number of those themes. All right, so JR, I'm familiar with your story. A lot of folks have heard you talk about some of the action forcing events that led y'all down the cloud path. Certainly that wasn't the only thing that got you moving. It was certainly helpful, and y'all had put a lot of thought into what your strategy was going to be. Given the messaging and the way that we're trying to think about this year's report and using it as a communications tool, what are some of the things that you saw as you were going down, as you were moving your environments, how you were communicating and what ended up being most effective?
So I think as we progress through our journey, and it's always interesting because our beloved Doug Robinson will say, "You've seen one state," and to hear states whether we started at about the same time or at different stages, just like we're all faced with a unique set of I'll say environmental factors that and whether that's budgetary, political, organizational, contractual, right? That we all have this sort of unique starting points. As I look down the list of recommendations, I mean, I feel really, really fortunate to be where we are in Arizona, and that we can, I think, firmly say we are already in the cloud. But I would say to any other state or entity that's out there, you probably have more in the cloud than you may realize today. And that, as you've been bringing on new applications, many of the core offerings for us as states are coming from cloud service providers. And whether, so I'd say, take an inventory, and then you can start looking at, how are the cloud environments, benefiting your organization, serving the organization, and how you build the story around even the decision points, right? Talked with a number of other state CIOs and IT leaders, and I think that conversation around having clear guidelines for how you decide what goes where. And, I think is really important. For Arizona, we spent time this last year really focusing on the last item in this list, because I think we got to enjoy the transition of the early items. We focused on maturity. And while we had cloud smart, I think language in our policy, even though it was labeled a cloud first policy, we had some decision criteria in that policy for where things should go and how you make decisions around that. We did delegate a good amount of some of the decision making to the individual agencies to make sure that the cloud that they chose to go to best served their business. So we didn't say, oh, we're going all in with one provider. So we very much have a multi-cloud environment. But one of the things we really wanted to be able to do was to say, great, good job, guys. You got your applications to the cloud. Okay, we got there, yay, but we're not stopping. That now we're in this OpEx model. The opportunity is to really optimize how we're using the cloud. And that is bringing in the FinOps type disciplines to understanding, like, hey, you turn something on, it runs at a rate, and it runs at that rate every moment you have it turned on. So how are we being smart about things we turn on and things we turn off? How do we have a disciplined approach to instead of thinking, what is the biggest thing I can get my hands on to run this application? You want to think differently about what's the smallest thing that I could possibly run this on, because that will be the least expensive. But then how do I ensure that I have the right automation around it so that it can scale as it needs to, both scale up and scale down? And then along with that, our operational assessment, we included a security assessment as well. Security is vital, whether you're on premise or in the cloud. You always have to be thinking about that. And so when we embarked on the process, we thought it was going to take us close to a year to complete the 100+ assessments that we needed to do. The team was actually able to complete the assessment process in less than a quarter. So it was right around 90 days. And the reason that it went so fast was, as the early agencies were going through the process, they were so excited about the data that was coming back to them and understanding where they are and where they're strong and maybe where they needed to improve. They understood where to focus their time and energy. And we started having agencies really pull on that assessment process and really lean in, to complete it. So it was a really good experience for us to move into that, what I call our optimization phase now.
Gotcha. No, and that's a great call out, that just moving to the cloud does not necessarily mean that you have modernized or created something new. It's the optimization that is allowed that really takes you to that next level. So I know we're touching on a lot of things that we're going to spend more time on later, but I think that's a great call out. We see that frequently, that you move into an environment, but you really haven't optimized things yet. So you still have that next step to take. All right, so Jason, let's head back over to Massachusetts, and let's go to the workforce conversation. Because optimization is a piece of that. How you get your agencies ready is a piece of that. Let's move to slide 13, Julie, if you don't mind, which does have some of our workforce data from the report itself. And I think maybe let's just start with your perspective, what you're seeing from the workforce, where the needs are, what's working well, what isn't working well.
Sure. So we went through and had a training program, a defined training program. We are using one cloud provider, and we went through sort of a defined series of courses to train our staff. But then it seems we made it optional in terms of, do you want to pursue the training you just had? Do you want to use it? Do you want to participate in the cloud? And by making it optional, it allowed all of the FTEs at the time to opt out, essentially, in terms of providing cloud services longer term. And so as a result, we now have massive training and skill gaps, because they haven't had training in 4 years. And it resulted in a lot of the complexity in transitioning from on-premise capabilities to cloud capabilities. Absolutely, with the amendment that our cloud capabilities are covered, but we went the private vendor route. We just essentially outsourced our cloud management. which operationally I think we're not where we'd like to be from a staff perspective. And then there's also roles that we are now actively hiring that we're missing. We talked a little bit about, financial operations. I think having a cloud FinOps expert, somebody on premises who is actively reviewing the cloud financial use and then providing recommendations that affect how your cloud is managed and how to size everything, and if you have things that are just out there running forever that no one's paying attention to, having somebody with that kind of focus really does help. And we've heard from other states the savings that they've been able to achieve just by having that kind of resource is significant. So I think we need to train up better and really start moving people into a formal cloud team, and then building up the cloud financial operations as part of the skill set as well.
What kind of feedback do you get when you suggest a cloud FinOps capability within an organization or wherever it may be?
I think really it's one that it pays for itself. So we did have to go before A&F to get approval for the FTE, and the argument we used was just that this FTE will pay for itself, and we were able to provide just a few examples, and you can see the ROI of that kind of role is off the charts. Within a year that role will pay for itself.
Gotcha. And then that capability is residing inside, is it your organization then?
Yes, absolutely.
Gotcha. Great. Denise, why don't we stay on the workforce discussion and get your perspective on what you're hearing from agencies, what you're seeing and experiencing yourself.
So it's not on the list, it's all of the above.
Yeah.
So the technical staff within the agencies of Vermont are part of my agency. So we support all technology across the state. I am on the same feedback from Jason and JR is there is a skills gap. And I think part of it is we're moving really fast, and we're having these folks, we're trying to turn the old lights off while we turn the new lights on, but the old lights are still on. So we're at a bit of a transition right now when it comes to our skills, our staff, and the needs. And so while I absolutely think that a FinOps role is critically important in the operations piece, we're also bringing in a professional development manager team under our operations group, because we need to ensure that we're tracking those growth plans and skills plans for our staff to make sure that we are actually learning and skilling in the right capacities. So that's something that is already underway here. But I love hearing from what JR and what Jason said, because we're learning from what they're doing too. And there are some things that I think that we're a little ahead on when it comes to the capacity piece, especially around the alignment to business process optimization that we're trying to drive into the usability and the user experience on the cloud platforms that we're deploying. But again, making sure that we are putting the investment in and skilling our own staff within technology to meet those needs of the business is critically important.
JR, let's stay on the theme. You certainly have got a lot of experience here with a lot of folks. So workforce, run with it.
So I'll share a story which was specific to my department, and we went first. And I'll say the mentality, I was looking back on it, we didn't think of it this way at the time, but there's the story when folks got to the new world, they burned the boats. When we embarked on the process of closing the state's primary data center that we were responsible for, we said, we're closing the data center. We instituted processes that are governed through our governance process to say, if you want to buy a piece of hardware, you have to go through a special approval process. There used to be a fast track for that, and we turned that fast track off. And that in conjunction with our policy, we then drove and said, everyone, you've got to put together as part of your IT strategies you submit to us, what is your strategy for moving to the cloud and how is that happening over the next 2 years? So those things were the background. So we were clearly signaling out to the agencies the direction we were going. We went first. And I'll say the experience we had through our own organization was we had folks that I think would sound very similar to what Jason and Denise have shared, which is these are the guys that were running the equipment in the data center. They knew how to rack it and stack it and hug it and hold on to it and really take great care of it. We tried to paint the picture for them to say, you are server administrators today. We want to make you cloud administrators. And here are the benefits for doing that. And as I think you find in most change processes, we had some folks that were the early adopters that just jumped in and wanted to figure it out and put themselves through the training and just took off. And then we had those that were really wanted to resist. And we had a couple of folks that even left our department, went to another department that hadn't started their cloud work yet, found a home. But eventually we caught up to them. And all that to say, change is hard. Helping people through it is an important thing. Being very clear about what your direction is. And I think, Jason called out a key point, which is, if you provide options and you say, well, there's this option or that option, and there's a do nothing option, man, people are busy. And I think they're going to, with a few exceptions of those that are really driven to learn new things, it's easier to take the path of, well, if I don't have to do anything, I can just keep doing the thing that I do that I feel comfortable with and I'm good at, and I'll just keep riding that horse. So we were really fortunate, I think, looking back to say, by giving ourselves no other option, that we had to get good at this. And I will say that we invested and our cloud partners invested with us. They brought training to the table. They provided the courseware, the classes, the certifications. They invested with us here in Arizona. And I think that's why we are where we are, is, you got to have a beachhead somewhere. And so to have some folks that were doing the same job as others in the other agencies that went through the transition with us and could speak to them and say, yeah, it's okay. Oh, and on the other side, I mean, I don't know any agency that would say, oh, we have all the server, we have all the administrators we need. We're getting all the work done. What we were able to see over the course of our journey was, with the same number or fewer, we were getting more work done because we had less time. We were having to go out and press buttons and physically put things in and take things out. And, the same person could administer much more through, the tool sets and automations that are available. So, upside downside was also, we had folks that got much better paying jobs. They left us, but that's not a bad thing. It was great for their career. We had some folks that left us and came back. They left us for more money, but came back for the environment. So, there's stories, I think, all the way across the board. And going back to the point I want to make in this is it's being clear on your direction and then committing to that direction and following through on it, even when it gets tough.
Yeah, appreciate that. And so much of that has nothing to do with the technology itself. And, I think over the years, NASCIO has done a lot of work on the role of the CIO, and that role being a communicator, being a leader, being somebody who is charting a path, is really, really important. So you speak to that well. It's a great example, great story. And, this is workforce is another area where we drew, when we go back to the recommendations, learning from other states, we just saw a lot of states looking at this in a creative way. There was a lot of realization that not everybody is going to move at the same speed, but this is an opportunity. Moving to the cloud and going through that process is an opportunity for people to learn. We're seeing states do some interesting partnerships with their technical colleges, with their providers, to set up the training and create an opportunity for others to get better and more, conversant in the cloud technology. So there's a lot of creativity happening in that space right now, which is pretty encouraging, and that, we certainly saw as we were talking to folks about this very, very issue. So, Julie, if you don't mind, can we move to slide 8? And Jason, I wanted to key off of, earlier you said you've got about 60% of your environment in the cloud today. Working on the rest of it, what was kind of the method to the madness as you thought about what went first, what went second, what still has to go? How did you think about that? How did you prioritize that?
I really think it was a coalition of the willing. So it just so happened that our partnership with the comptroller was very strong. And so our enterprise systems, there was a natural fit for them to actually be leaders in this space, even though, again, some of the more complex systems, and quite frankly, it allowed us later to say, we migrated our HR system. I think we can migrate your system right now. So it allowed that. There were systems that were, so I think it was coalition of the willing. And then there were systems that are legacy that, they take a different migration effort. Our mass health eligibility system is a mainframe-based system, and it's still in the mainframe today. And we are actually mapping out an approach to migrate it to the cloud right now, but that's not going to be next year. That's like a 2-year effort to make that happen. And so there was also, I think, a technology capability aspect to it. So coalition of the willing plus technology capability. And I think the combination of those two allowed us to migrate the larger, complexity didn't really come into play. The larger, more interested applications.
Gotcha. Great. And so as you're thinking ahead, and maybe this is something that you just don't know yet, but how are you seeing the next round of the coalition of the willing? Are they seeing the other agencies get on board and there's more buy-in, or has everybody bought in and it's just a matter of time before the migrations happen? How are you seeing that progress?
One of the things that has really helped, and I'm sure everybody else is seeing this as well, from an operations standpoint, operational services are just better in the cloud. If you just think about from a scale perspective, all the vendors that we're working with, what they're able to do in their cloud space far exceeds anything we can do. Losing the ability to touch the machine is a very, that's not an impactful ability to lose. And so what we've seen is those that we haven't migrated yet, they're on board. It really is now just a matter of processing speed, how quickly we can go cycle through them, working through the different, technology capabilities like I talked about. But it really is, we're not getting any more pushback from anybody because we've had such significant success. And in fact, we're now seeing vendors for some of our new systems that are coming in. We've pushed back. Our business community is pushing back for ones that aren't in the cloud. They're saying, that's nice, but why aren't you in the cloud? We don't want to have this on premises. We want it to be in the cloud. So.
Gotcha. That's great. That's incredible progress. Denise, along this line of, what we're seeing on slide 8 and where the trends are in terms of the functions that are, adopting cloud services. How are you seeing that conversation evolve? What are the areas that are most focused or most interested in moving or have already moved? And then, maybe some insights on what's driving that particular function.
I feel a little spoiled because my predecessors did a lot of the hard work in getting that cloud first approach in place. And so we're at the point here where it's more about bringing the laggards up, where we're the majority of the state. Everything that we have done over the last 8 years has been cloud-based. We have our UI and ERP systems that are I don't want to call them the holdouts. They're the ones that we are in active funded efforts to replace and move forward. So the interesting part is that it is expected now. So there is no jumping into the cloud. We're in the cloud. We're here. And it is about agility. It is about security, and scaling. Cloud enables and allows us to do that. So we feel some of the pressures where that doesn't exist, because we're ultimately, at the end of the day, not meeting the needs of the people receiving the service that that particular system is supposed to be enabling. So we have a very active legislature that expects cloud. And so for us, what we're looking at is less about the industry that we are bringing up, because at this point, everybody's in the cloud. It now is about the, tapping into what JR said, the optimization piece and the security piece. The data hygiene and the data governance is going to be critically important to this, because what's next is here, and being able to ensure that we have provided controls, security, data privacy, because it isn't going to take a 5-year overhaul effort to flip a switch anymore. And now that's what the cloud has enabled, is it almost becomes as simple as a switch, but really it is has to be a lot more prescriptive.
Gotcha. And so JR, again, thinking about functions, as you're looking at optimization, next round, continuing onward, are there certain functions or agencies that are thinking more broadly or more innovatively now that they've been able to see what the cloud can bring and how they can use it? And what's driving that thought for them?
Yeah, so I want to step back, just make one point, and then step into your question, but the two are connected, I promise. When we talk about cloud, and Jason made a great point, like I think don't assume that your mainframe can't cloud. All right, one of the moves that we made, early in our process was, the state owned a couple of mainframes, and you go through that process, you end up on the end of the lease, and you're figuring out, okay, what am I going to do next? And and of course the applications aren't ready to go anywhere, so you gotta re-up. And we went through a process to move our mainframe to more of an OpEx model. When we look at cloud, what is cloud? Cloud is just paying to use somebody else's computer, and you can do the same thing with your mainframe. And so I'll say it's out there. And what that did for us as an organization, and I'll say for the state, is that we were able to get out of the business of trying to figure out what's the right size for our mainframe. If we overbuy, then we're spending money that we don't need. We're not using the compute cycles on it. If we underspend, I'm providing poor service to my customers, and move that to where, hey, that's not my problem anymore. And our partner now takes care of that. Also, in that transition, the folks that were our mainframe operators, they were rebadged, as the outsourcers' employees. So we were able to keep our knowledge base. They got great, great packages, good raises. They're happy with their role, and they can now serve other customers, including the state of Arizona. And so that took the workforce issue that I think a lot of us have if we still have mainframe applications, which is where, which nursing home are you going to find the talent that can still, support the application? And so, not wanting to keep tapping our retirement communities. But by moving that and getting our mainframe into the cloud, now I'll say our agencies that had their applications there, they're now on a stable, sustainable platform and can plan on purpose how they're going to migrate out of that. So I'll use our Medicaid agency as an example. They're going to be deploying or employing a much more modular approach to how they go through and replace the Medicaid application that we run on our mainframe. So they're gonna put in we'll say a translation layer between the current system and the new system, so they can onboard new modules, bringing new capabilities, but being able to leverage all of that, agility, scalability, and elasticity in the cloud to be able to walk that process, and then take advantage of the cloud native services and all the innovation that's coming to benefit in that process. And so I think that to your question, yes, our agencies are now starting to think differently. They're now able to look at how can I embrace truly agile processes and agile approaches to what would we consider large scale modernization problems, But with things in the cloud, you're able to take a different approach. And again, paying for what you use, benefiting from the innovations that are coming. And then we've got some, I think with the cloud partners, some, great architectural advice that we can get along the way of how to do that transition gracefully.
Right. No, that's awesome. Thank you. I want to move into the theme of security, of course, is always top of mind in our world. And I wanted to bring slide 10, which speaks to some of the characteristics that matter most to an organization when considering cloud. What has been, and this will be the same question, what has been the dialogue with state around security cloud? I know that's something that that tends to be one of the bigger issues that comes up when folks are being informed or educated on cloud solutions. So why don't we spend a minute on security and how you're seeing it and what you're experiencing with cloud providers. And Denise, let's start with you.
So this is very timely. Before I joined the webinar, I was in a meeting with our operational standards board, and we were having just this conversation around ensuring that the requirements and the standards that are coming from this team are meeting the security policies, and how do we ensure that the configuration is actually meeting the security policy. So that's more of an internal piece, but it's also informing the procurement and the platform decision process on moving forward with new solutions. That did it meet that core requirement, and does it adapt to those core requirements? And I think that we're seeing this consistently across the board, and learning from our other peers in state government as well, because we each have our own statutory requirement in this space. And it is always going to be one of the key legs of the stool, and is never missing from the conversation. It really drives a lot of the decision process that we're having. And interestingly enough, our users are now becoming more adept to that within the business agencies, because they're learning about the security requirements. So there's really not a lot of pushback.
Gotcha. That's great. Jason, what's your experience been on the security question? We got you on mute there. Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry
good.
about that. So security is absolutely critical for us in Massachusetts. We have essentially, we've defined a security architecture for our cloud solution. We've introduced the logging approach. So we have a logging approach to account for all the auditing requirements and the security auditing requirements for our system. And we perform regular reviews of our cloud architecture in terms of security. We've also just implemented application testing, since we've identified, so many times the security issues aren't with the, the underlying cloud infrastructure, it's with the applications. And so we've really doubled down on that focus. And we've built an entire QA process associated with assessment of the security vulnerabilities associated with any application. Where we are weak and continue to focus are the general vulnerabilities that we have way too many critical vulnerabilities in Massachusetts right now, and we are actively building a program to work across our agencies with the CISO leading an effort to reduce all those critical vulnerabilities down to our SLAs. So more to come on the vulnerability side, but our application focus is something that I think I would strongly recommend, since when you look at the vectors of attack, more often than not, they're through an application or end user.
Right. Awesome. All right, JR. to you.
So the security question was one I'll say I spent a lot of time on in the early days. And I'll kind of repeat the same argument I would make is that, hey, our cloud providers that we're working with spend more on cybersecurity and security in these environments and providing capabilities than we will ever get budget for. And then I would also ask the question of, hey, if you're asking me about, do we like some of the things Denise mentioned, or, in terms of like, well, is this cloud environment going to meet this policy? I'm like, hey, does your current environment meet the policy? Let's not assume that just because it's sitting in your data center today and running, that it actually complies and doesn't have vulnerabilities. And in most cases, we would find that the cloud environment, through working with the cloud providers who really, really want to help you secure those environments, they will do best practices, whether they call it well-architected reviews. Their tool sets will provide you with insights, both on an on-demand alert basis, but also on a monthly overview basis, to give you insights into what is your security posture in the cloud, and help highlight areas where you can take action to make positive changes. And over time, just the argument is I'll say no longer being brought up to say, well, is the cloud secure? Like, the cloud is secure. The cloud can be as secure, if not more secure, than what your current data center is. But you gotta work with the experts to make it happen. And I can tell you that I am positive that every the hyperscale cloud providers that are coming to you and wanting to talk to you about their solutions, they know how to make their environment secure, and they will work with you, and they want to work with you to do so. So take advantage of that and make sure that's part of your overall strategy. And it also becomes a training opportunity, right? Because as they are helping your teams go through that process, your teams get smarter and better at it. And it continues to increase both their knowledge and their value.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So let's move, Julie, if you don't mind, to slide 7, where we show where the data is showing what we would expect, that there's an increase in the use of cloud technologies across portfolios and service catalogs within states. But I wanted to go a little bit. I wanted to extend that conversation, because there's this sense of inevitability, and I mean, y'all are all living it. You're all experiencing it. The conversations are getting easier. You're able to spend less time convincing, more time doing, which one would think gives you more time to spend convincing folks of the next big thing to come down the pike. So I'd love to spend a little bit of time on that, and I know we want to leave a little bit of time for questions from the audience as well. So as you've been moving these environments, as you've been bringing them into places where you can optimize, you can create a more modern system, a more modern experience, what's the next thing that you're really trying to spend more time on as a CIO in terms of innovation, service improvement, whatever it may be? And Jason, let's start with you.
So in terms of the cloud space, I think for us, it's the evolution associated with containers and ensuring that we're able to deploy in containers, and that we can take advantage of the container technology. Will also help in terms of some automation aspects and the operational concerns. So I think for us right now, in terms of the cloud services, that's the next big technology for us.
Gotcha. And then thinking then beyond cloud and other emerging technologies, has the migration or the evolution of the conversation in Massachusetts, has that given you more room to talk about, I don't know, Gen AI, whatever it may be, or not for that matter?
I think absolutely. I think what I frequently say is our successful operational capabilities are the foundation for the innovation that we do going forward. And so in the Gen AI space, we're rolling out a private sandbox. We're going to have a contest for the different agencies to explore on their own their use of AI. And there's active support for what we're doing. We have a very offense-focused approach to Gen AI in Massachusetts, and I think it's because foundationally we've demonstrated that we get the security, we get the operations, and there's trust that we'll take care of that part of it. So that allows everybody else to innovate.
Right. No, thank you. JR, how about you?
So I'll say for me, it's business value. It's going to continue. You always have to just focus on business value. The technologies will come and they will, live their life cycle. The mix of things will change. And while, if I'm looking at the slide, I'm looking at saying, look, I want to, at least in concept, move everything up the stack that we can, right? Because the more that we can move into, more standardized solutions where we're doing less and less of the, configuration and administration, that's more time and value that can go back to our agencies executing their missions and delivering with the limited dollars that they have. But every single decision that we're going to make going forward really has to come back to what is the value to the organization? How does this help them accomplish their mission? How does this make their people more efficient? How does this deliver a better service experience to, the customers on the other side? How does this, encourage greater attachment rates? How are we removing barriers that we've built in through our technological solutions that prevent people from getting the services for which they are eligible? How are we making sure that we're walking in their shoes? So I want to say the technology is always important and it does great things, but it has to serve the needs of the business.
Thank you. All right, and Denise?
I echo that. I have been saying with these modernization efforts that the technology is the fuel for the vehicle. It is not the destination. And so business value and business optimization in this is absolutely critical, but at the same time, it's ensuring the usability piece too, where we are really looking to maximize the value of our current investments before we start making all new ones all over again. We want to make sure that we've exposed the function, the feature, and the need as it pertains to the intended outcomes of our supported business agencies and the services that they're trying to deliver, because that's what this is all attached to. And I think from the technology lens, we are absolutely going in the direction of responsible AI. So we have opened the conversation. We're driving a level of knowledge and education, both to the public, to our legislators, and internally around what AI means in the sense of tech, what it means in business process and automation. And that helps us in that maximizing the value of the current investments that we're making.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. So let's see. We've got Eric has been. I want to remind folks, if you have questions, by all means, put them in the chat. Eric, I appreciate you giving us some as well. I'm going to follow up on one of those, and then if we don't get any more questions from the audience, we'll kind of turn the floor over for any parting thoughts from our panelists. But I did want to ask quickly about governance and what you've learned through the cloud conversation, what's changed, if anything, and how it might be evolving now that you're gaining a lot of traction and you're beginning to see new conversations around Gen AI and the responsible use of it, for instance. So Denise, we'll go reverse order here. So Denise, why don't you start?
Just in governance alone, one of the things that we're looking at is these processes are not set it and forget it, similar to our configurations, that it is an evolution, just like our adoption into the cloud. And so we have to evolve our governance models as they align to both the growth in the platforms that we are deploying, the needs, and the extensibility of these cloud tools that we're seeing across government right now. And then governance has a couple different flavors in the lens in which you're looking at it, whether or not it's data governance, whether or not it's AI, security, tech, business. And so there's a lot of lot of consideration there, but they're all so heavily dependent on each other, which is why I say it's not set it and forget it. It's really an evergreen process that IT is, at least within Vermont, we're taking on in partnership with the business. It's not something that we're doing independent.
Right. All right, JR, over to you.
So I definitely agree with Denise's sentiments there. I think when I think about governance, it's I'll say trying to find the right balance, right? You want governance that supports good decision making, but doesn't prevent decisions from being made. And I think that can be the challenge. And I think there's not going to be a magic governance model that says, oh, this is the one and all states should use this. It's going to come down to, again, what are your environmental factors? In Arizona, we have a pretty distributed approach to how IT is executed. And I think it's important, and I want to recognize that the IT leaders that are in the agencies that I serve, they're closer to the business. They know what's going on. I delegate to them the responsibility of, you've got to make sure that you're watching these things from an enterprise perspective. But you make sure that you're making good decisions that's going to support, the needs of your organization. So, whether the governance model has to include me or cannot include me in the right areas, where I can provide maybe overall direction, and they can execute more quickly within their own organization. So I'll say it's kind of finding the right amount of governance at the right levels and the right locations, just to help do the thing we have to do, which is it's about making good decisions and reducing risk in the process, but not slowing things down. If anything, we want processes, and to even put metrics into our governance processes that measure time to decision, so that you got things moving.
Right. All right, Jason, on governance, and then any parting thoughts, and then we'll wrap up and hand it back over to Eric.
So a quick comment on governance. I think, I think what we're all saying is, you've got to include the business community. Ultimately, it's all about the services that the state government's providing. And so if we're acting independent of that, we're doing something wrong. So, I think that's what we're all saying regarding governance, is that we need, you need to include the services community. Parting thoughts on the cloud would be, you're already there. And so, it's no longer a matter of, do I or don't I go to the cloud? I remember conferences, from 10 years back, that was all the discussion. It's happened. You're already there. And so it's time to really be thinking, going through that maturity model that was referenced earlier, and saying, I'm there. What do I need to advance my maturity in the cloud?
Right. Denise, parting thoughts?
Just realized I'm on mute.
Yep.
I echo what Jason was saying. And for us, we were starting to use the word responsible when we start talking about these next evolution technologies, and specifically AI. But I think that the same applies for cloud in general, because we're here. Now it's about, how do we ensure that we've been responsible?
Gotcha. JR, I think we got time for 10 seconds. Eric is saying we need to wrap up. So,
all right. Well, I won't belabor the point. I think Jason and Denise, said it well. And I think it's a responsible approach. We are stewards of the tax dollars and the responsibilities that fall at our feet in terms of IT and servicing the states that we serve, and the constituents and citizens that they serve. So it is about whether you want to call it responsibility, stewardship. That's what we focus on, and that's why we do what we do.
Right. Thank you. All right, Eric.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank all of you for being a panelist here, and everyone for participating. Julie, could you bring up our very last slide, please? And I just want to make you all aware, we've done a lot in cloud regarding publications, webcasts. So check out our resource center. There's 5 pages of resources out there. If you just did a search on cloud, podcasts, webcasts, reports, events like this. So we've got a lot out there, and we're all trying to learn from each other. So all of this wisdom coming from Jason, JR, Denise, and Patrick. Patrick was a state CIO himself. So all of this wisdom we're trying to share it and learn from each other. But we also appreciate the very important role of our corporate partners. We can't do this without you. So with that, we want to thank you all again. Julie, thanks for managing the tiller here and getting us through the slides. And we will close this call. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.